The 43rd President of the American College of Surgeons, Dr. Loyal Davis, speaks from the John B. Murphy Memorial Auditorium of the college in Chicago.
This motion picture relates some of the efforts of the American College of Surgeons to elevate the care of surgical patients during the 50 years of its existence. It is also a history of modern surgery because so many advances have occurred in the last half-century. The American College of Surgeons is the largest and the most active surgical organization in the world, and the oldest accreditation body for surgeons in the Americas, now celebrating its semi-centennial in 1963. But the college is more than that. It is the united efforts of thousands of dedicated surgeons who have joined together throughout the years to ensure the welfare and safety of patients. The names of many of these surgeons, long since gone, have been household words, and many of these giants in surgery served the college long and well. On the walls of this auditorium hang the portraits of the past presidents of the college. Among these are John M.T. Finney of Baltimore, the first president, Dr. George Crile of Cleveland, the Mayo brothers of Rochester, Minnesota, Dr. Rudolph Matas of New Orleans, Dr. Harvey Cushing of Boston, Dr. John B. Deaver of Philadelphia, and Dr. Everett A. Graham of St. Louis, to mention only a few of these distinguished men. But we are fortunate to have 12 equally distinguished living presidents, each of whom has contributed to the welfare of the surgical patient. From these men, we will hear what the college has done to protect and treat the sick and injured. First, I will ask Dr. Donald C. Balfour of Rochester, Minnesota, Emeritus Professor of Surgery of the Mayo Foundation and President of the college in 1935 and 36, to tell you about the program of hospital standardization, which the college originated in 1918. Dr. Balfour?
Dr. Davis, when I became president in 1935, the program of hospital standardization was in its zenith. This program, conceived by the college from the time of its founding in 1913, was put into operation in 1918 and was carried on single-handedly by the college at a cost of over $2 million until 1952, when it was transferred to the Joint Commission of Accreditation of Hospitals, of which the college is a member. The college's program established a set of minimum standards which every hospital desiring a certificate of approval voluntarily had to meet. These standards required that the hospital be safe and sanitary, that written records of adequate quality be kept, that tissue removed at surgery be examined by a pathologist, that adequate nursing care be provided, and that the professional work of the medical staff be reviewed regularly to ensure that it was of high quality. These requirements, which today are taken for granted, but we must remember that the hospitals in the early 1900s generally provided few or no safeguards for patients. In fact, the results of the college's first survey showed that so many hospitals failed to meet the minimum standards set up for the college that the meeting in October 1919 decided it was imperative to accelerate and expand its entire program of accreditation of hospitals which met minimum standards and assist those which did not. Since then, what a change has occurred. In 1952, the last year of the college's stewardship, over 3,000 hospitals had obtained approval. And as of today, more than 4,000 hospitals are accredited by the Joint Commission. The public and the profession can thank the college for its vital part in making hospitals safe for sick people.
Thank you, Dr. Balfour. You have set the stage properly for the appearance of our other distinguished presidents. One of the prime interests of the college has been in the education and training of surgeons, We are indeed fortunate that another president, Dr. Frederick A. Collar, professor of surgery at the University of Michigan, was also chairman of our graduate training committee for 10 years. Dr. Collar, what has the college contributed to the care of the surgical patient through its graduate training program?
After several years of deliberation, Dr. Davis, the regents of the college established a committee on graduate training in surgery in 1937. The college has maintained this approval program for residencies since that time, which meet its requirements, a list of which I have in my hand. This has resulted over the years in better education for the surgeon, particularly in the basic sciences, and has made him a very much better doctor. Emphasis is also upon a thorough knowledge of all phases of surgical metabolism and has made the surgeon more than a mere technician. He is now the expert in the pre- and post-operative care of the patient. This is very good for the patient and for the surgeon. Since 1950, the college has collaborated with the Council on Medical Education and Hospitals of the American Medical Association and with the American Board of Surgery in a tripartite committee which approves a single list of programs of education and training in general surgery. This is acceptable to all three organizations. Similar committees have since been established for otolaryngology, plastic surgery, for obstetrics, and gynecology. Finally, modern medicine is so complex that the young surgeon must receive the broadest kind of education, and as the oldest accrediting body for surgeons in the Americas, the college has a responsibility for seeing that graduate training programs prepare the surgeon to give the best possible care to his patients.
It is proper that Dr. Robert M Zollinger, a former president, chairman of the Department of Surgery at Ohio State University Medical School, follow Dr. Collar at this time. Dr. Zollinger succeeded Dr. Collar as chairman of the Graduate Training Committee. I have two questions for you, Dr. Zollinger. First, what changes do you anticipate in the future education of surgical residents? Secondly, what has the college done in the continuing education of the surgeon?
As for your first question, Dr. Davis, the entire field of medical education is in a period of flux, and it's not possible to predict accurately all the changes which will occur in the future residency training of surgeons. However, I believe that we'll see a gradual shift to a common or basic program of education and training of about 2 years, which will be taken by all young men, regardless of the special field of surgery they later intend to enter. After this basic education, the resident will enter an additional 2 years of specialized study, such as otolaryngology, neurosurgery, gynecology, general surgery, or orthopedic surgery. Now for your second question. Since it was founded in 1913, the college has stressed the continued education of the practicing surgeon through scientific meetings. These have been of two kinds. The annual clinical congress, at which the latest research is presented, in addition to a review of present knowledge in general surgery and in all the surgical specialties. This copy of the 1962 Clinical Congress program indicates the many subjects presented. Then there have been the sectional meetings, 3 a year, designed to bring the latest surgical know-how to surgeons in various areas of the country. These scientific meetings of the college are always well attended and have been highly regarded for keeping surgeons abreast of the latest developments in surgery. This is important, for a good doctor never stops learning from the time he hangs up his shingle until he decides to retire.
Thank you, Dr. Zollinger. Another aspect of the education of the surgeon is the audiovisual field, which has been developed to such a high degree by the college through its Cine Clinic, medical motion picture and television programs. Dr. Alfred Blaylock, chairman of the Department of Surgery at Johns Hopkins University, president of the college in 1954 and 55, has made some outstanding films for the American College of Surgeons. Dr. Blaylock, what is your opinion about the teaching value of medical motion pictures?
Dr. Loyal Davis, for over 30 years the college has been interested in teaching by means of medical motion pictures. In fact, the first motion picture made for the college and approved by it was the classic film, The Diagnosis and Treatment of the Infections of the Hand, by the late Dr. Allen B. Knavel in 1928. I'm sure our audience would enjoy seeing a brief clip of that film at this time. Of course, there have been tremendous advances in techniques of making motion pictures since 1928. Two of the most important have been color and sound. For example, here are some scenes from an operation for the tetralgia fallot shown at the 1953 Clinical Congress. After having completed the anastomosis, as you see here, the constricting clamps are removed. Thus allowing blood to go through the pulmonary artery to the right lung again. There was very little bleeding from the anastomosis, so that the clamp will be removed from the right subclavian artery. The suture holding it in place is cut, and the clamp is removed, thus establishing the anastomosis. In other words, an artificial ductus arteriosus. Today's modern medical motion picture is of the greatest value in teaching the student, the resident, and the practicing surgeon. The college is justly proud of its semi-clinic medical motion picture programs and its motion picture library. I think that particular credit is due Dr. Perry Hilga Jenkins.
The other arm of the audiovisual program of the college is medical television. Dr. Alden Oxner, professor of surgery at Tulane University, was our president in 1951 and 52. Dr. Oxner, what do you think of television as an aid in medical education?
The college was the first group in organized medicine to use closed-circuit television at a national meeting. This was 1947 in New York City. Since that time, television has increased enormously in popularity as a medium for teaching doctors. This is particularly true in surgery, where huge audiences can enjoy close-up views of operative procedures. And because of this, television has almost entirely replaced visits to the operating room itself, a means of education which the college used for many years at its scientific meetings. Television also permits audiences to observe all of the operation just as it happens. This is different from medical motion pictures, which can eliminate certain routine steps and thus be edited.
Thank you, Dr. Oxner. The American College of Surgeons was formed by surgeons from the United States and Canada. And since 1913, we've had the privilege of having 4 Canadians serve as president. The last of these was Dr. Newell W. Philpott, professor of obstetrics and gynecology at McGill University. Dr. Philpott, what has the American College of Surgeons meant to Canadian surgery?
Canadian citizens, Dr. Davis, have reason to be grateful to the American College of Surgeons, for the college extended its hospital standardization program to Canada, and for many years was the only agency to inspect and approve Canadian hospitals. In the second place, since 1932, the college has surveyed facilities for the treatment of cancer in Canada as well as in the United States. These two services by the college prove beyond doubt that the American College of Surgeons is truly American in its origin and scope. It has brought our two countries closer together with one common aim: to learn how to treat surgical patients better.
Thank you, Dr. Philpott. The history of the college shows that the fellowship has always regarded our two countries as being united through surgery and the college. Another aspect of the college's educational program concerns itself with bringing to the profession information about the latest surgical research. Dr. Owen H Wangenstein, chairman of the Department of Surgery at the University of Minnesota, is the proper former president to tell you about the Surgical Forum.
Dr. Davis, in 1941, upon approval by the Board of Regents, the first session of the Forum on Fundamental Surgical Problems was held in Boston at the annual Clinical Congress. More than 125 abstracts on surgical research were presented, most of which papers were published in the program of the Congress. The success of the Forum has been phenomenal, and the program has grown in breadth as well as depth to include most of the surgical specialties. This year, the program committee had 848 abstracts to choose from in formulating their program. In 1950, the college began publication of the presented papers in monographic form to make the program of the Forum available to the surgical profession. The pocket-sized Forum volume, introduced by the college in 1960, has proved extremely popular. Each year, the entire edition and a printing of more than 5,000 volumes has been sold out within a few months. The Surgical Forum continues to be a very important activity of the Clinical Congress. The Forum attracts the best research talent from American and Canadian surgical clinics and continues to add interest and meaning to the meetings of the Clinical Congress. What is new in experimental surgery presently becomes a part of the fabric of surgical practice.
Thank you, Dr. Wangenstein. One of the abiding concerns of the surgical profession is the prevention and care of the ever-increasing number of accident victims. Dr. William L. Estes, Jr. of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, is a senior member of the college's trauma committee and has devoted his life to the care of the injured patient. The fellowship recognized his dedication to the interests and ideals of the college and elected him president in 1957. Dr. Estes, what has the college done in the field of trauma?
For more than 40 years, Dr. Davis, the college's Committee on Trauma has concerned itself with improved first aid, transportation, and management of the injured patient. The college has long had an active interest in state and local committees which have helped educate the public and the profession regarding the prevention of accidents and the proper care of injuries, particularly of fractures. Prominent among the college's activities in this regard were its early and continued efforts to publicize the advantages of seat belts in automobiles and its campaign against the speeding ambulance. Since 1958, the college has been joined by the American Association for the Surgery of Trauma and the National Safety Council in an augmented program to prevent accidents and to improve the care of accident victims. More recently, the college has launched an intensive research program designed to improve the care of patients in emergency departments of hospitals. This has been most successful and promises to be another outstanding milestone in the college's activities.
I'm sure you're correct, Dr. Estes. Thank you. Since its founding, the college has provided leadership in the war against cancer, and its contributions to this effort are widely known among the medical profession. Dr. Warren H. Cole, professor of surgery at the University of Illinois, is a past president of the college and of the American Cancer Society. He will tell us what the college has done for the patient in the fight against cancer.
Before the college was founded, its predecessor, the Clinical Congress of Surgeons of North America, appointed a cancer campaign committee in 1912. This committee not only initiated the first article in a lay publication on the education of the public against cancer in 1913, but it also served as the first cancer committee of the college. Significantly, this cancer committee of the college, just 17 days following the founding of the college, played a prominent part in the formation of the American Society for the Control of Cancer, the forebearer of the American Cancer Society. In 1929, the college accepted the invitation of the American Cancer Society to make present-day knowledge of cancer immediately available by the organization of cancer clinics in approved hospitals, and since 1931, the college has conducted the only approval program for cancer facilities in the United States and Canada. The college has always played a leading role in the fight against cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. It takes a great deal of money to educate surgeons properly, and this is the fact which worries medical educators, families, and the young surgeon in particular. Let us ask Dr. Frank Glenn, chairman of the Department of Surgery at Cornell University, a former president, what the college has done to help young men to continue their graduate surgical education and training.
Since 1954, the American College of Surgeons has had a scholarship program, the object of which is to help worthy young men to complete their graduate training. During this period, the college has expended more than $300,000 for this purpose. There have been three types of scholarships. One has been a research fellowship designed to encourage promising residents to pursue an academic career in surgery. The second has been a scholarship to help young residents to complete their prescribed training. And the third has been a traveling scholarship intended to bring young surgeons from other countries to the United States for periods of graduate training here. It is gratifying to reflect upon the real contributions to surgery which a number of these recipients of scholarships have made.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn. Perhaps the finest contribution the college has made to the welfare of the surgical patient has been through its increasing efforts to elevate the standards of the professional care of the patient. No fellow of the college has been more devoted to this cause than Dr. Harold L. Foss, Emeritus Chief of Staff of the George F. Geisinger Memorial Hospital at Danville, Pennsylvania. Dr. Foss, when you became president in 1952, you devoted a considerable portion of your presidential address to the need for higher standards of patient care. Will you repeat some of the advice you gave that night?
The thoughts and actions of the founders of this college centered around the need to elevate the quality of care of surgical patients, Dr. Davis. This is one of the chief reasons why the college launched its program of hospital standardization, why it founded this cancer program, and why it has been so vigorous in promoting accident prevention and in improving the care of the injured. Two additional measures originated by the college to ensure better care of patients has been the Tissue Committee and the Medical Audit Program. The Tissue Committee, which has been so successful in reducing the incidence of unnecessary surgery, was made a requirement in 1951 for hospitals approved by the college, when it still conducted the program of hospital standardization. And it has been continued by the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals. The Medical Audit Program, begun in 1952 as a research project of the college, developed into a practical tool for the measurement of the quality of all facets of medical care. And it is being adopted increasingly by hospitals as a routine measure of patient care evaluation. Literally everything the American College of Surgeons has done has been aimed at the elevation of the professional care of the patient.
Dr. Foss, you've stated the objectives of the college well and forcibly, And I know you will enjoy hearing from Dr. I.S. Ravden, Professor of Surgery at the School of Medicine and Vice President in charge of Medical Affairs at the University of Pennsylvania, who has been equally forceful in his insistence upon high ethical standards in surgery. Dr. Ravden, what has the college accomplished through its campaigns to eradicate unethical practices from surgery?
Dr. Davis, when the American College of Surgeons was founded, one of the keystones of its policy was the eradication of fee splitting. I am proud to say that one of my fellow Hoosiers, Dr. Miles Porter, who was a distinguished surgeon of Fort Wayne, Indiana, was the instigator of the principle that fee splitting and fellowship in this college were completely incompatible. This does not mean, of course, that fee splitting was abolished overnight, but it does mean that for the first time, a great surgical organization took its stand publicly against this evil. I do not doubt that this stand has encouraged many practitioners of surgery to resist it vigorously. There have been other unethical practices against which the college has taken the lead. Ghost surgery, in which the patient is operated upon by an unknown surgeon, has almost disappeared due to the campaign of the college against it. Finally, unnecessary surgery has been greatly reduced in this country because of the work of tissue committees in our better hospitals and the education of the public by the college upon the need for the patient to select a surgeon who is fully qualified to do the surgery. This is not to say that all evil practices have been eradicated from the practice of surgery in this country. They haven't. But through the actions of the American College of Surgeons, the patient today is assured a better chance for good, safe, and ethical surgery.
Upon this note, then, we end the story of the contributions of the American College of Surgeons to the welfare of the surgical patient. We are proud of the fact that our distinguished founders and predecessors set the standards of the college so very high, and that they had only one goal in mind: the best possible care of the patient. Nothing else mattered to them then, nothing else matters to us now, and nothing else will matter to the fellows of the future. The motto of the college expresses our sole purpose: to serve all with skill and fidelity.
This film is a sequel to one also produced and presented to us by Davis and Geck in 1963 on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the founding of the college. This is therefore a continuation of the story of the activities of the college, narrated by its distinguished recent presidents. As director of the college during the decade of the 1960s, it's my happy lot to be able to speak to you about some of the notable trends during this period. It's been one of unusual and remarkable growth. The fellowship has increased by almost 1/3 and now stands at approximately 31,000 surgeons. The attendance at our clinical congresses has doubled during this period. The influence of the college around the world is manifested by the fact that we have fellows residing in 91 different countries. But mere size alone has never been a primary objective of the college. It's far more significant that it has had a spreading influence on surgical education and surgical practice here and around the world. In large part, this has been due to the dedicated efforts of many thousands, literally many thousands of fellows who have served on various committees or participated actively in our 75 chapters. The Committee on Trauma, for example, has more than 300 subcommittees at a local level who have had a very large impact on improving the care of the injured in various communities. Similarly, the Committee on Cancer has liaison representatives who strive to coordinate the many resources available to the patient with malignancy, doing so at a local level. A notable trend also during these years has been the greatly increased cooperation of the college with other scientific and medical organizations. All of them have a common goal in improving the care of the sick and injured. Whereas the college at the beginning of the decade held somewhat aloof to cooperation of this sort and was indifferent to the entry of government into medical events and health care, we find ourselves now cooperating with a great multitude of medical, surgical, and paramedical associations. A recent task force of the college included representatives from a score of such organizations and from several departments of federal government. I cannot conclude without expressing my deep appreciation to the members of the Board of Regents for their unwavering support of me during my years as director, and also to the many, many fellows who have enriched my life with their friendships.
I think of the American College of Surgeons as a continuum. Presidents and officers come and go, but the college maintains its continuing pursuit of excellence in the care of the surgical patient. No other surgical organization has done so much for the American people. Accreditation of hospitals, improved care of the cancer patient, the cancer registries, the extraordinary contribution of the Committee on Trauma towards better ambulance service and emergency care, and of course the tremendous impetus provided to postgraduate education through the Committee on Postgraduate Education, the Clinical Congress, and the sectional and chapter meetings. Truly, the college abides by the admonition of its founder, Franklin Martin, who wrote, "The aims of this organization and the reason for its existence lie in its disinterested and unselfish efforts to elevate this profession, to elevate the standards of the profession, moral as well as intellectual, to foster research, and to educate the public." This is the continuum of the college. In addition to this, every year, new innovations are adopted and new problems receive attention. When I was president, for example, the Meet the Professor sessions were inaugurated. Young surgeons were invited to meet on a very relaxed and informal basis with senior members of the surgical profession, usually professors and chairmen of departments of surgery. This has been a wonderful experience, both for the professors and for the younger surgeons. The aims of the college are discussed. There was always a wholesome exchange of ideas and a vigorous question and answer period. Initiated by the regents long before the so-called generation gap was being publicized, this has proved to be a continuing and very popular feature of the Clinical Congress. That same year of my presidency, the college issued an important statement of policy regarding tetanus immunization, which has remained a sound guide not only for surgeons, but for all practitioners of medicine. I may say that I am proud of the statements which I made in 1963 in my presidential address regarding the importance of responsibility and authority in American medicine. The need for the college and the American Medical Association to assume leadership in health care was emphasized at that time. Particular attention was directed to the need for improved delivery of care through qualified primary physicians and general practitioners. The need for family care was especially emphasized. In a word, the profession of medicine is the service of friendship. The American College of Surgeons lives up to this tradition and is fulfilling the destiny which its founder, Franklin Martin, foresaw.
Ladies and gentlemen, I always considered it a privilege to work for and endeavor to serve the American College of Surgeons. This was true primarily because the goals and objectives of the college have always been noble and altruistic in nature. This gave one the feeling that he not only was serving the sick and injured, but to some extent, even mankind in general. The yardstick by which all important decisions was measured was whether or not in the end this would benefit the patient. One, of course, can't go far wrong sailing under colors of that type. It was also a privilege to work with the various individuals, groups, and boards within the college, as this provided an opportunity to associate with and learn from some of the most outstanding men in American surgery. The particular year in which I happened to be president of the college rather blends in my memory with preceding and subsequent years. I suppose this is because the objectives and aims of the college had been quite similar over a period of time. I do recall that there were problems and unfinished business at the beginning of that year, and the same was true at the end of that year, although not all the problems were identical. But I don't suppose anyone is ever quite satisfied with what is accomplished in any given year. Rather than reviewing some of the detailed decisions that were reached or actions that were taken during that time, I would like to mention what I think is more important, namely a growing realization of the necessity for some change in attitude and perspective of the college. This related to an emerging idea that the college should have responsibility for enlarging its actions and interests over those which had been traditional during the past years, namely that it should be responsive to and take a larger part in medical programs of a national and even to some extent an international nature. I'm sure that this change in perspective will have much flow from it in the ensuing years. As a final word, I might say, as I'm sure you realize, that the Board of Governors and the Board of Regents are composed of dedicated and able men who initiate and are responsible for the important actions taken by the college. During my year of office, I was fortunate indeed in having two exceptionally fine men as chairman of these groups, namely Dr. Howard Mahorner, who was chairman of the Board of Governors, Dr. Preston Wade, who was chairman of the Board of Regents. In all, it was an active and a busy year, and one which provides many pleasant memories.
During the first 52 years of the American College of Surgeons, the general surgeons outnumbered the specialists. The trend, however, was definitely toward specialization, and in the year 1965-66, the specialists finally passed the general surgeons in number. I'm sure that this trend will continue, and it is most important that the American College of Surgeons remain the surgical home for all specialists who are interested in helping patients in any field of surgical endeavor. Thanks to the standing committees of the college, the able staff in Chicago, and the 9 advisory councils for the various specialties, The programs have continued to improve until I'm quite sure that the 5 wonderful days of which the Congress consists are so good that it is hard to figure out a way to improve them. I'm quite sure that this will be done. I well remember the Clinical Congress of 1929 and its orations and its wet clinics. These clinics were still in full flower, and the fellows of the college battled to obtain admission tickets to the theaters of the busiest and fastest surgeons of the day. Fortunately, we now have the wonderful City Clinic program, which teaches many more people in a much more efficient way. The Forum on Fundamental Surgical Problems has become one of the most important activities. The annual volume has a wide circulation, and we have learned, as we should have suspected, that the most stimulating thoughts in surgery are likely to come from young men. The basic purpose of the American College of Surgeons has not changed during the 50-odd years of its existence, namely the safety and welfare of the surgical patient.
During the year that I had the honor to serve in the presidency of the American College of Surgeons, the college continued in its efforts to improve the care of the surgical patient. The Board of Regents recognized and re-emphasized the importance of the team concept in the surgical training programs as well as in the provision of health care. Scientifically, during the year, there were many advances in surgical disciplines. In the field of neurosurgery, many questions concerned with the management and therapy of those patients who have subarachnoid hemorrhage, non-traumatic, particularly those due to rupture of an aneurysm or of an arteriovenous malformation, were resolved. In the field of coronary artery disease, the selection of patient and the choice of operation improved during the year, and late in that year in the cardiovascular field, there was a tremendous burst of publicity from the first human heart transplant, a technical triumph which really emphasized how little we knew about the problem of the rejection phenomenon. Renal transplantation progressed during the year. Cadaver kidney could undoubtedly give us a good or reasonable chance of survival, particularly if we looked at the difficulties engendered by, first of all, the occasional use of a non-viable kidney, and secondly, the rejection, the diagnosis and study and treatment of rejection. It became clear that the limitations in this area were, first of all, immunological, and secondly, the long-term effects, toxic effects of prolonged generalized immunosuppression. On the general overview, one recognizes the fact that the American College of Surgeons has long since given up just the study of national issues. It has become interested in worldwide problems. The traditional support that the college has given to scholarship, as well as to integrity, makes it a very influential organization on the practice of surgery worldwide. Many problems, complex problems, have been considered by the college in the past and will be in the future. For example, the ethics of transplantation, the controversial diagnosis of death, the adequate and proper approach to the communications media and the public, the answer to those who want abortion on demand. Competent study of these problems will remain the purview of those in this great college. John Donne, the famous English poet in the 17th century, wrote, "Man cannot be an island." This is equally true of organizations. We must work with those other institutions who have an interest in the same fields to study the problems involved in the delivery of health care to those who require it.
I retired from my 42 years affiliation with the University of Michigan Medical School in December 1967 and moved to California to be affiliated with the new University of California Medical School at Davis. This exciting venture at Davis has been an inspiring experience for all of us who have participated in its development under the guidance of Dean John Tupper. I was privileged to serve the American College of Surgeons as president during the second half of the 1960s, when one of the great issues that confronted us was how best to adjust to Medicare and Medicaid legislation. The United States Congress, in passing these social legislation laws, performed an historic act of emancipation. For this legislation made possible to a large segment of our population a right that had long been denied, the right to select his own physician and the means to pay for his services. This economically underprivileged individual was relieved of the stigma of medical indigency, with the result that there was a depletion of census in the charity wards and city-county hospitals across the country, and a corresponding increase in demand for beds in the private section of hospitals. When these effects of the legislation became apparent, there was a wave of apprehension across the country by many surgeons in charge of education and residency training programs who feared that the traditional patterns of training were being threatened by the diminishing number of service patients. The American College of Surgeons responded to this challenge and asserted its leadership in conducting a national forum in 1967 to discuss this problem. A set of guidelines for the organization of residency programs was proposed and later published in the November 1967 Bulletin of the college. The principle, essentially a restatement of principles long established in university-based hospitals, was this: that in a modern teaching hospital, all patient care is a group action, with several physicians and surgeons, as well as others, participating in teams, which make the care of the patient a private and personal responsibility. The successful application of this principle has upgraded both the quality of patient care and of residency training in many hospitals in America. The American College of Surgeons has thus asserted and demonstrated that patient indigency is not an essential factor in the structure of providing the highest quality of medical education for undergraduate or graduate students. The noblest objective of the American College of Surgeons is well stated in the title of this film: to serve all.
During my term of service as president of the College of Surgeons, there were a number of changes made and a number of innovations that were affected during that year, which I believe have been very important in the development of the college. First, one would have to think of the change of administration. John Paul North, who served us for 9 years as the director, followed Paul Hawley, a very difficult role in the first place, but he did it exceptionally well, and he served the college in an exemplary fashion. He retired 2 years before his mandatory age limit, and in the 2 or 3 years before he retired, a search committee was appointed, and they chose Dr. Rollins Hanlon, who was a distinguished surgeon, an educator, and leader of in-surgery, a department head in a major university, and a great helper in all the affairs of the college. In the past 3 or 4 years, there have been 2 very important meetings held by the Board of Regents, under the aegis of the Board of Regents, called planning sessions. The first one was about 3 or 4 years ago, which was very successful. And the new idea of self-look by organizations and corporations is an excellent idea. We felt that we had about as knowledgeable a group on our Board of Regents and in our Board of Governors as we could possibly find elsewhere. So we had a meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona, 4 days, in which all of the problems that face the college in the next 10 years or so were discussed in great depth. And all the Board of Regents were there, many of the Board of Governors, all the officers, all the staff, and some outsiders, such as the president of the AMA, some of the government officials, Philip Lee, and some of the others who gave us advice as to our relationship with the government. And in these 4 days, there were formal plenary sessions and workshop groups, and I believe that the resulting resolutions that came out of that meeting have been most important for the future of the college. Some of them have to do with our relationship to government, which has always been a touchy proposition. We don't want to have a lobby, and yet we must communicate with the government. This is one of the areas in which the college has taken an advanced step, which I think is most important. There are many other areas that were discussed at this meeting, and some of them had to do with our internal affairs. I've always felt that we should not work on the basis of limiting our activities because of lack of money. I've always wanted to raise the dues and have enough money to expand our activities and pay our staff enough and get enough staff so that we can do an efficient job. These matters were taken up, and I'm glad to say that the dues were raised this year, and advice to the Board of Governors, not as much as I thought they should be, but enough to improve our position as far as our future affairs are concerned. There were several other very important steps taken at this meeting, which were put into action later. Some have to do with a new committee, a committee on continuing education, which is most important, and another committee on another advisory council on pediatrics. We have to discuss sometime very seriously the trouble as it involves us all, the population explosion. We're exploding too, and we had the largest meeting we've ever had. We either have to go somewhere where we can get more room, or we have to divide the meetings into 2 or 3, which is not a very good idea. This is one of the problems for the future, and is concerning the Board of Regents a great deal. I would like to say that in my 11 years with the college, and my 3 years as chairman of the board, and my year as president-elect and president, I've come to feel that the college is a strong, an active, and a growing organization. We don't have to worry at all about the future. If we go along the way we are now, this College of Surgeons will continue to be the leading organization in surgery in the world. And it must take a bigger role in the future in surgery and in medicine in general. I'm sure it will, because government is going to turn to us for advice. Government's going to turn to us for direction. And if we're ready to take the challenge, we can help in the way things are going in surgery and medicine in this country. And I feel that the college is healthy and doing well with a wonderful future ahead of it. Thank you.
At the present time, the problem before the profession and our college is a search for a better method of delivering health care, to place our tremendous know-how at the bedside, to make it available for all our people. To put the past year in perspective, I would remind those who may view this chronicle in the years to come that it was in this year that man first set foot upon the moon. It was a year of beginning concern for man's pollution of his environment, of continuing concern for our rapid population growth rate, and a year of confrontations on our campuses. In this year of demand and achievement, surgical accomplishment kept pace. The revascularization of the ischemic heart gained momentum. Basic studies in organ transplantation continued. Gains continued in bioengineering, automation, and a computerized approach to medical practice. The gap between this knowledge and its delivery continues to widen. Your college is concerned with this problem and with the maintenance of standards in the obvious press of change. Efforts at continuing education have been intensified, and during the year, a self-assessment program was initiated. This examination and updated core knowledge will be offered on a voluntary and strictly confidential basis. Thus, our fellows, in fact all surgeons, will be afforded an opportunity to determine if and in what areas they may have become deficient. I would consider this one of the great accomplishments of the year. One of the innovations that should add vigor and a new viewpoint is a committee to increase the participation of our younger members in the affairs of the college. And at the last meeting of the Regents, a younger member was present as an invited observer. Toward the future, the American Surgical Association and the college have combined forces for an in-depth study of the healthcare problem. Committees are gathering data on the adequacy and the distribution of surgical care, of the use of our surgical manpower, of the frequency with which operations are done by those with and without specialized training, and the possible advantage of a universal computerized medical hospital audit, to name but a few of the items. To coordinate these efforts, a planning conference, the third within 5 years, is scheduled for December. In addition to the officers and regents of the college, men of expertise from the American Surgical Association, from the AMA, and from government have been invited. From this broad consultative study, we should then be in a better position to favorably influence the imminent changes in health care. Because organized medicine should speak with a unified and not a fragmented voice, we have bent every effort to strengthen our ties during the year with the American Medical Association. During this challenging year, it has been a real privilege to work with Dr. Hanlon, our director, Dr. Longmire, the chairman of the Regents, with a distinguished board of Regents, a distinguished board of governors, and certainly a dedicated administrative staff.
Comments of the previous speakers have been concerned with the various changes and innovations which have been brought about in the college during the past few years. My own remarks will be brief, as is appropriate to one who has occupied this position for a relatively short time, in contrast to the duration of tenure of previous directors, which have been measured in decades. The specific advances which the previous speakers have alluded to are based on the collective work of fellows, officers, governors, regents, aided by the dedicated work of the college staff. I am particularly conscious of my personal debt, as well as that of the college, to Dr. John Paul North, who preceded me in this office. Dr. North's dedication and hard work have set a standard to which all of us may aspire. There's a clear challenge and opportunity for all of us at this time to extend the achievements of the college in the years ahead.
I will not make a catalog of all the current activities and developing projects of the college. Rather, I will select one item, which Dr. Baker alluded to, which encompasses the new tasks and the new approach which will intensify the social commitment that has been characteristic of this college since its founding. I refer to the Study on Surgical Services for the United States, a project which we are embarked on in conjunction with the American Surgical Association. To describe it concisely, it is a far-reaching plan designed to define clearly for the first time the precise dimensions and characteristics of surgical care as it is now available in this country, with a view to establishing practical guidelines for improving that care in quantity and quality consistent with reasonably attainable national and individual goals. This is a large enterprise, but it is not a visionary one. It will require the intense and sustained effort of thousands of surgeons in this college, enlisted in an increasingly close and effective relationship among individual fellows, their local chapters, and the college headquarters. This, of course, is not the sole effort of this college. There are many other activities in cancer, in trauma, in transplantation, in the assessment of manpower needs, in professional liability, in education at all levels, and in regulation of professional conduct. But the broader and more intense participation in the determination of national priorities for surgical services will constitute a new chapter in the distinguished history of this great college.